What's up, y'all? It's Tar, and I've been digging through some older Pokemon games. I wanted to propose this weird idea, which is that there will be Terastalizing in the Unova Remakes. So I know what you're thinking. It sounds weird at first, right? But I can make it make sense to you. So I want to start off by showing you what originated me looking into this idea, and it's this post on Twitter here by Victini Blast. So they posted a screenshot of Pokemon Black and White 2, where you can see these blue crystals in the game. So I loaded up my DS to Pokemon Black and White and began investigating. So, I looked everywhere for this in-game. It was in freaking Driftvale City, and it actually is there. You can't talk to it, but it's these crystals on display, and it paints an interesting idea, right? As if Terra crystals always did exist in Paldea, but a small dab of it somehow ended up in Unova. And yeah, all these NPCs, they don't talk anything about the crystals. There's some weird ideas going around concerning this image, like apparently Professor Tora worked alongside Fennel in Unova, which is news to me. I don't think that's true. I'm gonna try my best to give you the facts and try to make this sound cool. So yeah, to entertain this idea, it's almost like Gamefreak put this in the game to foreshadow the existence of Terra crystals. And what's even cooler is when you go to the Teal Mask DLC in that crystal pool and you get a clump of the crystals, it almost looks identical to this picture here. But I'm trying to be impartial here, right? I have to say this, it's not a Terra crystal. Also, it's a pentagon. I know Tropigus has pentagons on it, but for these crystals, you've only seen them as hexagons. So that kind of closes the book, right? It's just a crystal they put in the game. It has no meaning and it's not foreshadowing Terra crystals. Unova has nothing to do with Terra crystals. That's how we close the book, right? But then comes, 2023, the Indigo Disk is coming out, and they mention Blueberry Academy is in Unova. And this is why I wanted to talk about this idea, because there's a chance that this can all be spun differently. There is still a cool possibility for there to be Terra crystals and Terastalizing, the whole gimmick in Unova Remakes, and it works like this. You see, when they remade the Hoenn games, Ruby and Sapphire, they retold what Hoenn was. Remember, in the original Hoenn games, all it was is Team Aqua and Team Magma trying to resurrect these ancient tyrants. That's all it was. But when Oraz remade the Hoenn games, they carried on the gimmick from X and Y and changed what the original Hoenn story was. Now this time, we learn how the gimmick of that generation plays a role in Hoenn's story, the Mega Evolution gimmick. How Rayquaza now is one of the first Mega Pokemon in the world and a natural Mega. How Kyogre and Groudon kind of have these Mega-like states where they can transform mid-battle. And how apparently there are Mega Stones all over Hoenn now. And that AZ visited Hoenn from Kalos. And also when Rayquaza beats up Deoxys in the post-game, apparently that creates more Mega Stones and they fall on Hoenn. This is not what Hoenn used to be about. I think they might do something similar with Unova Remakes, which is a really weird idea, but it's the idea that they'll retell what the Unova games were, which is just Team Plasma and Zekrom, Reshiram, and Kyurem. What if they retold Unova's story, but intertwined Terastalizing into Unova region's lore and history in a way where Terastalizing always was involved? Like the people back then Terastalized their Pokemon. The incidents around the moment where the original dragon split off, maybe Terastalizing was fully involved. You never know. Maybe this means back then, Zekrom and Reshiram had Terrasto forms. Maybe they'll reveal to us that whatever the original dragon was back then, it actually closely relates to Terastalizing. Just like the ultimate weapon and the Megastones have been around for 3,000 years, hence why it was easy to mix it up with Oraz's lore. Terastalizing is technically, there's no time limit to this. The Terastalizing meteor fell 1 million years ago. It's not far-fetched to say a part of that meteor ended up in Unova, and back then during the original Dragon days, Unova had their own Terastal era. Maybe as the Indigo Disk establishes, just like Ogerpon and 2 other Pokemon to have terraforms, that when we go into Unova Remakes and dive into a whole Terastalized Unova world, that a bunch more Pokemon get terraforms, just like all the new Megas we got in Oraz. This idea sounds crazy, right? Now, okay, let's bring up some criticism, right? One, this is gonna change what the original Unova story was. And some people might not like that, but Pokemon is always changing. There's nothing we can really do about it. It would technically be a retcon, but it would breathe a different life into the Unova games. So, okay, there's 2 options to this. What I said right now is Oraz-like remakes to Black and White, which is the equivalent of them making Scarlet and Violet graphic remakes for Unova, like full-sized end model open world entire Unova region remade, except this time you see the Terra raids all over the place, you see those golden Pokemon, and a lot of trainers in game talk about Terastalizing as if it's perfectly normal. You know, and they'd also expand Unova to add in a bunch of other places so that it's a giant world for you to explore open world. But, you know, I mentioned this in a previous video, there's a mindset I'm picking up on how Gamefreak wants to do their things, and it sounds more likely that instead of making an ORAS-like black and white remake, that they would split their work into two pieces, just like they did for the Sinnoh era, which is making just faithful remakes and then putting their efforts towards a Legends-like game. But even in that situation, it still works. So let's say we just get casual black and white remakes, BDSP-like, but let's hope they look a lot better. And the real juice is in the Legends Unova, Legends Kyurem or Legends Victini game, where they explain the involvement of Terastalizing in Unova's history. Something that would be made up as of that game, but it could lead to a lot of cool ideas that first you have to swallow the pill of them changing what Unova originally was, but then you get to explore a lot of cool things. Let's call it like Legends Victini, right? Where for some reason, you know, you've got a partner Victini, you're this victory trainer, little boy, and you're gonna solve the region's mess. Imagine at the end you uncover a statue of what the original dragon looked like, and they like depict it with the same 19th Terra type crown that we learn about in the Indigo Disk, almost implying that back in the day, the original dragon somehow tapped into the same all 18 type power as Teropagus. Like I said, it makes for cool stories. You know, maybe you could learn that the reason Blueberry Academy is in Unova is because Unova is tied to that Terastalizing stuff in the first place. I think that when we go to Driftveil City, to this crystal part, that they'll change it to where this is a Terra crystal. And let me show you how this can make sense. So let me load up ORAS. So I was digging around in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, the originals. They have all these paintings on the wall. Let me show you some of them. They're kind of cool because this is back in the Game Boy Advance days. You can barely make out the pixels. Here's one. It's an odd landscape with beautiful and fantastic scenery. When you look at the photo, you see some orange, you see some blue. So you imagine the original devs had something in mind when they made this. You want to know what happens in ORAS? Since they have more pixels to work off? It's an odd landscape with bizarre and fantastic scenery. Remember that orange and blue we saw? Does it remind you of anything? The distortion world? They replaced it with the photo of Giratina in the distortion world. You see what they're doing? See, this is why I wanted to make this video, because Gamefreak likes to mess around like this and throw a new spin on what originally was in the games. Giratina didn't exist as of Gen 3, but oddly, that freaking photo looks a lot like the distortion world. Did they have the distortion world? It seriously does, by the way. And also, an odd landscape with the bizarre and fantastic scenery. It literally sounds like, even though it was like 2002 when these games were made, that they threw in a teaser about the distortion world. The same way we had the strange souvenir in X and Y. If I remember correctly, Diamond and Pearl was in development for so long and constantly delayed, it would make sense that during the production of Ruby and Sapphire, they already had Diamond and Pearl's legendaries and ideas planned. But you know, I'll finish that thought in a second. Let's keep going. There's more paintings in this museum. It's a huge stone tablet inscribed with Pokemon and dense text in small characters of an ancient unreadable language. Well, that's crazy. But on ORAS, what did they do? Look at that tablet. That actually does look a lot like it did in Ruby and Sapphire, but it kind of looks like now it's an ancient tablet talking about Mega Evolution. Oh, this is my favorite one. In the corner of the museum is this painting. It says, the artist painted this from imagination. And look at it. You got like a pillar on the left, some pink thing on the bottom right, and then this like golden creature in the middle. Look at what it says. The artist painted this from imagination. It's a painting of a legendary Pokemon from long ago. The Kanto legends, Johto, and Hoenn. These are the only known legendary Pokemon. What the hell is that supposed to be? That's none of the above. But look carefully, a painting of a legendary Pokemon from long ago, but the artist painted it from their imagination. It's not a real Pokemon. It just came to the artist's mind one day, they painted their vision. What do you think this is in ORAS? This unrevealed legendary Pokemon in the Gen 3 games. It's a painting of a legendary Pokemon from long ago. The artist painted this from their imagination. That golden blur, it's an Arceus now. Not that any human has ever seen Arceus, just the nature of the world, because Arceus is the god that exists all around us. One day they had a vision that coincidentally was Arceus, and they painted it. Okay, I don't want to show you anymore, but what I want to show you in this is Pokemon having fun with what they made. So I think that this crystal clump that's in Driftvale City right now is not a Terra Crystal. But when Unova Remakes are made and we come back here, they'll update it to be a Terra Crystal, along with a lot of the game. And there's other potential for this too, you know. Here's Nakreen City in the museum. There's a couple things on display here, like this Armaldo fossil, this giant Dragonite. In the corner of the room is this freaking mask. Now this mask has nothing to do with Kitakami, but when the Unova Remakes come out, you never know. You look at the mask now, and it's an Ogerpon mask. Anyhow, y'all let me know your thoughts. I think it'd be a pretty fun idea though. I know a lot of people would be mad that they're changing what Unova used to be, but everything Gamefreak does is always gonna ruin Pokemon in one sense and make it fun in another sense. I mean, if the original dragon turned out to be like a pure dragon type, but somehow it has the same ability as Tropigus to get that 19th type crown, it'd be pretty cool. And yeah, that's my theory. Make sure y'all shank that like button, and I got a lot more fun ideas to talk about, so we'll do that next time. Take care.